Good morning, YouTube. I may have lied to you a little bit, but I may not have. I said yesterday that I was going to do a long form on a particular subject. I don't remember what it was. I wrote it down in my phone. And I'm going to talk about gratitude and gratuity. I've been keeping that circling around in my head. But there's a certain amount of I am holding these for ransom until I can get comments or until somebody says they'll show up and let me do it live and they'll engage with me. And I spent yesterday, because my phone charger finally died, my C2C finally died. I spent yesterday trying to figure out how I was going to get my phone charged well enough that I could have it back at the tent to do any kind of content. And the answer was I didn't. That's the truth. The truth is I'm sitting right now. It's just after 8. It's 8:25 a.m. in an EST, and I have 14% of my battery. It is charging on my hand warmer, which has 25% of its battery. So, logistically, I should not be doing this. But I want to do this because I didn't do it as much yesterday as I wanted to, because I spent so much of the day desperately trying to find money. Well, I made $10 that I was able to save toward cigarettes, and then I made $2.50 that I was able to eat, and I fell asleep without feeling inclined to grind anymore. I did what everybody does. I did what makes me comfortable and what allows me to sleep without dreams. I put Neebs on in my earbud that doesn't go on the ear that I lie on my side, so in my left ear, because I lie on my right side. I turned them down to a whisper, and my left ear is half deaf anyway, so I didn't turn them down very much. It's actually more than half deaf. And I fell asleep. Comfortable, warm, safe, secure, and most importantly, comfortable. So if what I'm doing, and I talk to my therapist about this all the time, so it's none of your fucking business because you don't ask, but if what I'm doing is immersion therapy to all of the things that have terrorized me my whole life, because you just don't know, because you don't listen, because you don't watch these long forms, frankly, that I have spent my entire life from the moment I could understand, and before then, because we moved a lot and we were robbed. We returned home from a Christmas vacation to find our home empty of everything but the furniture when I was 5. So you don't understand poverty until you've lived it and until you've known what poverty is like your whole life. You just don't understand poverty, even falling into poverty as you have. Most of you who grew up in poverty did not understand the poverty because your parents loved you enough to shield you from it. The people who grew up in poverty and understand it are either professional athletes, or gang members, or dead. Musicians don't really understand poverty anymore. There are fields now, like digital art even, and anything business. Most fields since the 90s have been closed off to the poor because the poor hyper excel. You have to understand, your typical type A personality before about 2005, literally about the time I graduated high school, your typical type A personality was a boy who grew up in poverty with an abused mother. This is real. And so those people were barred entry from all fields because, like, look at Wolf of Wall Street. The reason they tried to make Wolf of Wall Street a big deal was because here's a story. Well, what I'm telling you right now, why Scorsese thinks that Wolf of Wall Street isn't actually a stain on the American culture and on American art, that Wolf of Wall Street isn't in its own way piss Christ, is because he thinks that character's interesting because he didn't grow up in grinding poverty. So Scorsese actually thinks he's telling a moral tale about what upper middle class looks like when they excel, what they do, the horrible shit they do. You do. People with money who don't also have charity in their hearts, who don't also have Christianity in their upbringing, who weren't poor, who never had nothing, who don't know what it's like to have nothing. Watch Mad Men. Just scroll it back a generation and look what the previous generation looked like when they got ultra wealth. And look what they put themselves through to get ultra wealth. And that's the thing. That's why I'm talking about this. Because I'm demonstrating for you what it looks like when I cycle through two obsessive thoughts. Because what I'll do is I will replace an obsessive thought with an obsessive thought. So let me throw some numbers at you. All right? My life has become about numbers. And it's not easy to live that way. And it's not easy to live that way stoned. I'm sorry, my hand is in your face. I didn't realize. I'm still not very good at this. I don't have a lot of practice. I didn't plan to do this. But anyway, the reason that your scrivener and your mathematician religions, like Pythagoreanism, Judaism, and Islam, the reason they avoid and abhor alcohol is because it makes you hugely unreliable. Alcohol makes you hugely unreliable. The weed is not why I'm unreliable. Let's talk about why I'm unreliable. If I were to get a job, right, and as a writer and as a scrivener, okay, so why am I unreliable as a source of information? I am unreliable as a source of information. You should not be coming to me as your source. I'm not Clint of Clint's Reptiles. I don't have a master's degree in this. I don't have associated publications with what I'm doing, right? I'm not Neebs Gaming. Neebs of Neebs Gaming actually has an animation education. He went to school. Now, Absro doesn't, but Thick also had a business education. Duralius served in the military. These are things that give people credibility in certain fields. You see what I'm saying? Well, I don't have any. You shouldn't find me credible in the historical field. You shouldn't find me credible in any field except for the experiential mystics. And that's the thing about Dunning-Kruger, is that if I were saying to you, well, as an experiential mystic, I also have a perfect understanding of quantum physics, you should go, okay, yeah, no, because you identify as an experiential mystic, that means you can have no explanatory power of quantum physics. You cannot teach us what quantum physics is. Correct. Dunning-Kruger also has an inverse effect, where if you doubt your abilities, you're actually more likely to be better outside your field than the people who don't doubt their abilities. So, because I know I'm an experiential mystic with no particular education, I have spent the intervening 20 years from the first time I realized I am an experiential mystic. It's actually been about 22 years. I was 13. Okay, so that actually would be about almost 30 years. 25 years is what that is. I can't hear anything. I am so deaf. All I can hear is my own talking. So the only way I would know that somebody was outside my tent right now is when they started shaking it to get my attention. Which has happened before. Read my journals. I was putting all that stuff in paper to sell to Patreon, so it's not on YouTube. I didn't talk about it on YouTube. I'm actually disciplined enough that I can do that. That's why I have 3 channels, but I stopped using the talking to myself. I stopped using talk to the future to. I stopped doing that because I got a follow. That was pretty cool, but nobody was showing up, and it was too much energy, too much time, and I needed to make money. I needed to make it quick, and that's what I'm talking about right now. This is what I do: is I bounce from obsessive thought to obsessive thought to obsessive thought, as the obsessive thoughts become terrorizing to me. As they're insoluble, I just jump to another thought, because you never know what not thinking about a problem is going to lead you to thinking about the problem. It's like, we've all done this. I just got really good at it. I got really good at the magic of it. So like, we've all done this where we had like a puzzle or a problem. Usually, for most people, when they go, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's you get stuck in a moment in a video game. This has happened to so many people. So many people, it's relatable now. And I'm allowed to talk about video games as a part of the culture. They're not counterculture. They're not subculture. They're just a part of the milieu. Video games are just as important an entertainment medium today as television, and they're more important than movies. Movies have begun to refer to the visual storytelling style of video games. Deadpool was a movie adaptation of a Deadpool. Deadpool x Wolverine was a movie adaptation of a Deadpool video game, conceptually, thematically. Because video games are the last bastion of not just escapism, but of the suspension of disbelief. For whatever reason, when you have a controller in your hand, you're willing to completely suspend all belief that what's happening in front of you is real at all. And because of that, I'm pointing out how the Dunning-Kruger works in your life. Because you're able to suspend all belief that is you, and that what you're doing you could actually be good at, you're able to be excellent at the video game. Think about Dark Souls. When you die, you don't come back to life. And so I've been having this obsessive thought about how I really need to talk to you about how the Souls-like, or more importantly, they're called roguelite or roguelikes. There's actually no nomenclature, because it's it was something that video games didn't realize they were doing all at once, that they were all experimenting with this style of game. And so the fans call them roguelike or roguelite, and that means it meant something for a while, but they've become synonymous because the developers will put them on the game, and they'll use them interchangeably, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, tubular. I do that on purpose. That's another obsessive thought that I've been having. And obsessive thoughts are about reminding yourself either to think, improve upon, or do, or say something. That's what obsessive thoughts are about. So if, like, when we talk about the ADHD community talks about, I believe that I belong in the ADHD community, and that I'm allowed to speak for, to, and among the ADHD community. When we talk about obsessive thoughts, like when you're hanging out with a friend and they're talking, but you're thinking about what it would be like to like shove a kid off a balcony or whatever, and you're just thinking about that instead of what you're supposed to be thinking about, and we call that obsessive thinking. I wouldn't call that an obsessive thought. I would call that an intrusive thought. I would call an obsessive thought a thought that I can't let go, that I'm thinking about even when I don't want to be thinking about it, when it's distracting from what I do want to be thinking about. And that's why I'm doing this, because what I was doing was watching the Neebs Conan, what the shit? How does that always happen? I was watching the Neebs Conan series, the second series of Conan, and I was appreciating that Ada Hop kept the soundtrack so similar to what Thick imagined Conan's soundtrack being like. while he was still with us. And so I was valuing that Ada Hupp was keeping Thick's memory alive. And I value that series because like in Minecraft, when Thick just was out and hated that game, Anthony stepped in to play the fifth role, and I think Anthony is actually my favorite of the remaining 8 or 9 personalities associated with the channel, but that's neither here nor there. I was watching them, and I was doing surveys, and this is the math, the numbers that I wanted to talk to you about. Circular thoughts. There are a lot of things that I need to talk about, and I find a way to weave them all together because I could show you my art. In fact, I've been trying to figure out how I could get back into doing wall hangings, but once it gets warm, that'll be easy. I can just go up in the woods and do wall hangings, and I can maybe try to sell those. They'll be low quality and shit material, but I can get cheap colored yarn from Hobby Lobby, and that's exciting. I can get skeins of colored yarn, and but I gotta move my tent situation too, so it's all startup costs. I need help with the startup costs, but every business needs investors. Do you not realize? See, this is what you don't, maybe you don't understand, but when you're a small business owner, the first thing you have to do is hit up all your friends for as much money as they'll give you. Hey, I'm starting up a business. I need thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Help me out. I'll name a dish after you. Something. I'll talk to you. I'll put your picture on the wall. Something. I need money. And this is how you know who your friends are. This is where that idiom, a friend in need is a friend indeed, comes from. A friend in need of money is going to mow your grass. They're going to capitulate to whatever it requires for you to give them the money. And I keep telling you that, and then you keep telling me I'm not giving you anything, friend. And it's like, okay, yeah, your use of friend there is ironic, and if you do it again, I'm going to hit you in the fucking mouth. Don't you dare add insult to injury. You're injuring me by refusing me the money that you owe me. You are. Don't you dare insult me on top of it with irony. Irony is the lowest form of wit, and when Plato said that, he was talking to Jews. I'm not joking. Plato was a big fan of the Jewish people. But that shit gets old fast. Irony and sarcasm, they get old fast because they're not actually witty. Think I'm joking. I'm looking around because I'm anxious because I want another cigarette. And that's what I'm trying to tell you, is that I am, the way I'm making my cigarettes right now, it's actually working fairly consistently, and I'm feeling good about it, is I'm using a survey service, a survey app. I'm going to sound like one of those ads, but they're not sponsoring me, and frankly, I could open each one of my shorts with an image of what my Cash App account looks like, how much money is in it, every single time. I have $10 right now in my PayPal because of the survey app. I was able to make $10 on it yesterday. I was able to do, it takes you do 5 surveys, you get $5, but you have to do all 5 to cash out the $5. Fair enough. Because some of the surveys take like a minute. So if I was able to cash out every single dollar that I did there, that would be unwieldy for the service, because the service actually does a bank-to-bank wire transfer. It's seconds, instant, boom, no problems. So whatever, and sometimes it doesn't have surveys. Like right now, there are no surveys in it. And that's where I'm getting. Yesterday, I was able to do 13 surveys. I did 13 surveys yesterday, so I made $10, and I was 2 surveys away this morning. 2 surveys away from $5. $15 is 2 packs of cigarettes with $2 left over. It's $13 even for me to buy my cigarettes. Fucking great. So I wake up this morning, I do about 15 surveys, only one of them pays out, because the surveys aren't stupid. They know that people are lying, and they also know that they only want to talk to certain demographics of people. They also know that certain demographics of people, because they're extremely racist, have certain prevalent opinions. And so what they don't want is white males over 25 who are underemployed and not making very much money. Because white males in my demographic over the course of the last 8 years have been extremely bitter and violent and vocal. And so you, because of your inherent racism, because of your inherent prejudices against white males that you need to confront and you need to conquer and you need to question. The unexamined life is not worth living, and if you don't examine all of your prejudices, all of your biases, your life remains not worth living. That's why you're unhappy. Anyway, I'm one survey away. I got one done. I'm one survey away. If I did one more survey, I could make $5. And so what I should be able to do is go, well, if I make a 3-minute video, I'll make $15. I'll get 15 people send me $1 on Cash App. I should be able to rely on that income because that is a time sink. These videos are a time sink that is fucking up my life. And that's what I have been telling you since 2 weeks before I became homeless, since the moment I got that eviction notice. And notice I'm smiling because I'm going to talk to you in a long form just like this one about how my predictions are always right. They're always right because you prepare for the worst and you hope for the best, because the best is entirely outside your control. It is entirely outside your control whether you get drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs or the Philadelphia Eagles in this next draft. It is entirely outside your control. The only thing you can control is your preparedness for life if they don't draft you. And that means if you were drafted by the Buffalo Bills, you got to be prepared to be drafted by a loser. You have to be prepared to not be drafted, because the majority of us are not going to be drafted in this draft class. The majority of us are not going to be selected to be risen up out of poverty, out of the grinding slavery of wage. I will not go back to a wage. I will not enslave myself to a wage, to enslave myself to a renter's life. I own my tent. Giant fucking hole that makes me unsafe and all. Call it defiance all you like. I like my life. And you aren't allowed to take it from me. And so anyway, I need to make $5. I need to make exactly $5. And that it fucking upsets me, and it's starting to trigger me, which is going to become defiance. I did not get this side trimmed quite well enough, but we're fine. But the hairs on my mustache grow in different directions, so it's hard to trim it, without a mirror and good tools. I have shitty dollar store scissors, so I did the best I could. I'm really not worried about it. And it's starting to trigger me, and it's going to become defiance. Then I'm going to do it every single day. I need $5. It's your responsibility to tell someone, hey, I know this homeless guy. Do you have $5? Do you have $5? Do you have $5? Hey, I got $5. I asked my friends. I got $5 on my Cash App. I'm sending you $5. Even the gaming app that I'm actually going to use that actually pays out, you don't understand how lotteries work, you don't understand how math works, and so you just don't understand how anything works. But the other one I'm using, Just Play, every 1,000,000 credits, they call them tokens, coins, whatever, every 1,000,000 credits you give up, you gather up in a 3-hour span is a guaranteed $1. You can get 1,000,000 credits in 1 hour. It's actually pretty easy to get 3,000,000 credits in 3 hours. It's pretty easy. And then if you use the offer wall games, teaching you how to make money, we can become friends. You can talk to me on Twitter, and I can really help you make a little bit of extra cash. I'm telling you, I make pretty consistent cash. enough that I'm able to, plus donations, keep myself in weed and cigarettes, food, snacks, and I just bought new socks, and I plan to make enough money today to finally ditch these fucking long johns to get new underwear. I'm fucking stoked for that, even if it's going to put me back in these disgusting, well, they're not disgusting, they're just annoying, the blue Nike sweatpants that I was wearing. They're not called sweatpants, they're jogger pants. Whatever. I'm stoked. I'm generating about $5 to $7 a day consistently in my Cash App. There is $5 to $7 at the end of the day. That kind of consistent. Yesterday I made $13. I made $13 without donations just yesterday. I'm telling you this. I made, well, if you count the money that I wasn't able to cash out, and I don't count the money I'm not able to cash out, because I've got $6 sitting in Snacksy, and I've got almost, I'm about 1,500 credits, I think that's right, away from another $10 from Misplay, and I've got almost $5 that I'm ready to cash out. I've got $6, but it doesn't cash out to 5 until 7. This is when I'm going to stop using Snacksy, because Snacksy's fucked and it's really expensive. To cash out is really expensive, but I've almost got $5. So I've got these diversified portfolios of growing money that I can cash out from, that then grow more money all over the internet. I've got 5 of them. I've also got Buy Me a Coffee and Patreon. So I should be generating the kind of income that allows me to get an apartment. And the reason that income isn't generating is because you're very jealous. You're very jealous that I was prepared for this, because you would not be prepared for homelessness. And so instead of listening to me tell you how to be prepared to transition into a different stage of your life, you go, well, I'm never going to be homeless, so I don't need to listen to this guy talk. And it's like, I'm not talking to the homeless. The homeless don't need my help. People who are already homeless, A, they wouldn't listen to how I live because they don't want to live how I live. And B, they want out. And so they can surrender themselves to places that, like Salvation Army, that will force them on the government tit, because they don't care to live on the government tit. Because some of them maybe have never lived on the government tit, and they just want to retire on Social Security and food stamps and Section 8 housing and Medicaid and whatever else there is available. And good for them. I don't. I'm young enough and my mind still works well enough that I can make a living off of my skills. That is called talent. I have a talent for this. I know that because people have given me money in the past for it when they didn't know. When they didn't know that I was a male victim of sexual assault, child abuse, domestic abuse as an adult, and now systemic government injustice. I was making $120 a month before those people knew I lived, that this was coming. As soon as they learned this was coming, they canceled their subscriptions to my Patreon. I went from $125 a month to $25 a month in a day. Boom! Like that. Why? Because I got the eviction notice. They weren't even willing to help me buy food while I fought my eviction, my wrongful eviction. She evicted me to retaliate for some petty disagreement that we had, because I wouldn't let her suck on Muslim cock. She evicted me in retaliation, and as I opened my mouth to say that in court, he banged his gavel and sentenced me to homelessness. That is injustice. That is corruption. That is perversion of the law. And then you want me to go back into the pervert corporate universe. Go fuck yourself. I will die in this tent first. You have no idea. No idea. My father told me that he couldn't have lived the way that I lived. My father, look, you got to remember, I grew up as a boy who idolized his father. And my father used to tell me stories about serving in the army in Colorado, waking up to 10-foot snowfalls, having to climb out the upstairs window of the house, climb out of the attic, the neighbors all having to climb out the tops of their houses to get down to their cars, to unbury them, to get to the base. I grew up with stories of Vikings and wolves, White Fang. Balto was one of my favorite movies. But I grew up with stories of Vikings even. I said that, but I wanted to repeat it. The Vikings lived in this with less. Even in Balto's time. I mean, we're talking about coal and oil. We're talking about trains, right? We're talking about cars. We're talking about the reason in Balto's situation, the reason that story is even interesting is because we had all that stuff and Anchorage was still that isolated from that stuff. And so those people were in that way heroic. I don't want you to think of me as a hero, because heroes on some level are calling people to follow them, to join them. And I'm not ready. I haven't built my Argo. And my people haven't identified me as Messiah. So I'm not calling anyone to go anywhere. Follow me anywhere. I wanted to demonstrate for you how distracting and confusing my obsessive thoughts can be, because I didn't get to talk about what I was going to talk about, and I knew that was going to happen. I was going to chase myself away from it. But in this episode of Conan, second series, Anthony and Neebs are arguing because they've decided they're going to make rival friend camps. They call the Thralls and Conan friends. We're going to go capture a friend today. Because Conan the studio, does a really good job of capturing what Robert E. Howard was trying to illustrate. And that's the brutality of pre-modern life. The utter brutality of the slave trade. He was accused of being a black lover, an African lover, an Africophile. Like that's a bad thing. He was accused of being a Whigger 100 years before anybody would think about it. 70 years. By academics, book critics, cultural influencers. And see, that's what you think I want to be, as a cultural influencer, because I'm imitating the cultural influencer. And you can't tell the difference. But can you tell the difference in an AI-generated script? Can you tell the difference in an algorithmically generated script and a genuine script? Can you tell the difference? And a genuine speech? A genuine delivery by a person of charisma and a prefabricated algorithmic AI-generated one? Do you know the difference in your intelligence and artificial intelligence?
Because you're about to be fucked dead. You understand that? They're going to fuck you like a condom. In fact, they might use you like a condom to fuck your friends. You know that, right? That if you're not at least as smart as your tools, you can't use them. You know that, right? But now your tools are self-aware. Are you? Like, this is real shit. Whenever my granddad would make an error, he wouldn't blame the tool. He'd say, well, I gotta be at least as smart as the tool. Because the tool was designed by someone at least as intelligent as the task I'm doing requires. So if I'm not as intelligent as the person who designed the tool, if I'm not smart enough to use the tool the way it is designed to be used, then I'm not smart enough to do the job. That's how my granddad used to talk about himself. And you know, I once said to a manager in McDonald's that the reason I was so efficient is because I work smarter, not harder. She actually assumed that what I was saying is that she's a dumbass. Because she was working hard and not smart. By taking too many trips between whatever. I just move the thing closer. Whatever. Or I get a thing done in fewer trips because I use the cart instead of my back. Like the cart is designed for. And I said, well, you gotta be at least as smart as the tool. And she goes, like I'm telling her that she's a dumbass. And it's like, if you're offended by somebody telling you that you gotta be at least as smart as an inanimate object, you're not as smart as a fucking inanimate object. That means you're not human in a meaningful way. It means you're too fucking stupid to be managing a McDonald's. There are things for which you're too stupid, and you know it. That's why when you hear me say, God damn, you're so fucking stupid, you subscribe. I got 2 subscribers off that video. The you're too fucking stupid to talk to me, 2 people subbed. Now since then, half of them have left. But there's a reason Lewis Black still kills. There's a reason that off the success of Blue Comedy Tour, Ron White is still going. And Larry the Cable Guy is not. There's a reason. It's because the person standing up in the front of the room and going, God damn, y'all are fucking dumb, is so much funnier than the person who's trying to be dumber than you. Because you realize, oh wait, he's just parodying me. The one who's trying to be dumber than you is actually being cruel in how stupid he thinks you are. But you don't know the difference. That's something that I watch these commercials. Like, Europe. Here's an obsessive thought I've been having. How much I fucking dislike Europe. God damn, Europe is so fucking stupid. I don't think there's a person. I don't think there's a single human being below the level of decision maker in Europe, the continent, who's not actually brain dead. Who doesn't actually only have the intellectual capacity of a 9-year-old American child. Because you know how they say, like, animals, oh, dogs have the intelligence of a 2-year-old human child. Oh, birds can speak at the intelligence of a 6-year-old human child, right? Europeans can think at the level of a 9-year-old American child. Don't get me started on the Chinese. There's a reason they send the best of them here. There's a reason the best of your children is sent to the United States. And it's not that your colonial power is worth a damn anymore. Assholes. Shit, your biggest and most important wars were about how the majority of your continent wasn't allowed to participate in the being a colonial power. And now you all just want to take credit for France and Belgium? Go fuck yourselves. Seriously, you're the worst. You've never had a unified identity. And now you're telling me all of a sudden Czechs and Serbs have the same ethnic background and it's French? Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Just because you guys didn't learn about racism until last decade doesn't mean that you haven't been racist this whole time. Cravings suck. And in a way, I want you to see these cigarettes in exactly the way you would see Scott Weiland relapsing on heroin. On black tar heroin, too. Not even the good shit. Which is not ironic, or not unironic, because those are black brand cigarettes. Don't smoke. Don't start smoking. Don't vape. Nicotine is not worth it. I use nicotine because I have severe ADHD, but also obsessive thoughts. And probably the other kind too, intrusive thoughts. I don't like telling you how stupid you are, but you have to hear it. You have to see it. You have to understand that on some level I'm a fool. On some level what I'm doing is stand-up comedy. On some level what I do want to do is I want to go to open mics with this material, but I don't know. I am absolutely doing what Rogan and Mark Maron do before the interview sections. The reason you watch their shit is because that you watch the interviews, because the people who aren't the host of the show are interesting. I know that if I sat down and did interviews, you would like my shit better just because you'd be interested in the other person. Because you think you know me, and so you think you've been conditioned. You've been Pavloved. They've rung that fucking bell for you so many times, you don't even think about it. You're just like, oh, okay, well, interesting conversation's going to happen. There are two people, and they've recorded it. It has to be, naturally, it has to be interesting. You haven't watched enough of it to come out the other end of that asshole and realize how uninteresting the vast majority of it is. Like, because you've never put yourself, you put yourself on that couch. You're like, I want to be the person interviewed, and I get it. So do I. I do this, so someday someone will interview me and go, how the fuck did you become famous as a homeless person? And I go, I'll tell you how. By telling people how bad they suck, and they fucking hated it. But it eventually, somebody fought back on me, and I was able to show my personality, and people went, oh, actually, I kind of really like that guy. And despite themselves, they became better people. But I realized that I was unlikely to ever get there without being the one in the chair. Because what I realized is that when I talked to people and let them ask me questions, their questions sucked. But the people who ask good questions, they'll actually listen. They'll sit and they'll listen for an infinitude of time. Fuck, I hated being with her. She was awful to be around. But when she would ask me a question and let me actually answer it for multiple days in a row, my actual skill set's shown. My actual skill set is being able to keep a conversation alive for a month, for months, for years, for the entire time you know me. A single conversation. And that goes for every conversation we've ever had. That's my skill set. And it's a skill set I could teach you. It's very easy. You just pay attention. Hell, I was listening to Bradley Cooper rave about Pat McAfee. And then Pat McAfee have to explain to the audience that the way that Bradley Cooper watches their program is the way he wants every single subscriber of his channel to watch his program. Is just put it on. And then when you hear something you like, interact, and then go back to whatever you were doing. Just have it on. That's what I'm asking you to do with me. Just have me on. And when I say something relevant or I say something that you want to hear more of, hit the comments, but just have me on. It's weird. But I think it's because Pat's dedicated audience, are older people who grew up with the radio and grew up desperately wanting to be able to instantly interact with the radio. I could never call in. And so there are a lot of people who just think, well, he won't. And so anyway, Neebs and Anthony, CSN, they're arguing about their thralls because Anthony is deliberately gathering up useless thralls, entirely useless thralls, just to be he plays the consummate little stepbrother. And so Neebs is bossy mom of the group. So Anthony is doing a bad job on purpose. Anthony is doing a bad job on purpose because it's funny and because of the nature of his actually being kind of the younger stepbrother. They never let any of his stories, like all of his stories, die. They all just, they get aborted. Now, because if that's because he's an alcoholic or whatever, I don't know whether he drinks. I don't know. They're all alcoholics. The other guys are all alcoholics. And so a lot of their narrative threads will just die because they'll forget about them because they record once a week. So they're arguing about their throws because Anthony's are bad on purpose. And Neebs is trying to get specific kinds of throws because he is trying to accomplish specific kinds of goals in the game. And so they're arguing about this. And they're arguing about the utility of human beings when you're in a decision maker role. And now you have to remember that they're arguing about this from Neebs is Anthony's boss. And so Neebs is having a boss to employee moment where they're actually, but boss to employee moment between two people who are role playing being peers, but peers in their owning other human beings. And so it's this interesting inside-outside three-dimensional Mobius strip where everything is kind of tangled up in all the abstractions, and so none of it matters. They can just walk away from it, and neither of them learns anything and go, oh, it was just for the comedy, and walk away from it. But that's why comedy is important. That's why the fool is a sacred position. And that's why I take this position as a person who's incredulous, incredible, and I stand up in front of you and I act a fool. It's a religious position, y'all. It's sacred. And Neebs, for whatever reason, decides to take this position that he's going to teach Anthony that everyone can have utility. Everyone can be useful. Everyone can be useful in some way. What he's not saying is that none of Anthony's throws is useful. What he's saying is that they're not useful for the specific task that he needs accomplished. And so he tells Anthony, he says, well, everyone can be useful. And Anthony takes a, well, kind of obviously, yeah. And Neebs goes, well, wait a minute, but ring bearers and weddings. And Anthony goes, well, yeah, I did that. I did the most important job at the wedding. And now that's the unexamined life. That's just taking what they told you as a child and not thinking about it again until the middle of adulthood. That's what that is. And I'm jamming this finger in your face. Fucking cope. This is important shit. This is the only way I have to indicate that it's important. I don't have a blackboard. So I can't. Take notes if you take notes. You do it. You care. You pay attention. You do what you have to do because you pay attention, invest, you pay. Yeah, you never pay for something by accident. You might pay more than you meant to, less than you anticipated, but you never pay by accident. You always decide to pay or not to pay. Attention is the same way. Jordan Peterson is fucking wrong about this. He's fucking wrong. And so Neebs pushes him on that in the dialectic form, and he's like, well, think about it. It's a ring, but you don't really need a whole boy for it. Like, we've got this job done and I've got a whole boy to do it. And if you really break down, and then my obsessive thought became about the actual wedding traditions, because I'm the only person alive who cares. That's not true. I'm the only person I've ever met and ever spoken to who knows, who actually knows. When I ask people, I'm like, do you actually know why we do certain things? Like, why do we have a best man? And they're like, no. And when you tell them, it just absolutely blows their mind, and it changes their opinion about marriage at all. It changes dude's opinion in a real way. But the ring bearer is an extrapolation. It's a civilizing of a different tradition. It used to be that the best man carried that ring. And the reason he needed to protect that ring is because that ring was sacred. And so there's a story relevant to this. There was an emperor. Now, I don't know if it's true, but I read it in Christine de Pizan. And so I don't know if it's true, but there was a Roman emperor who evidently had this virgin girlfriend. And he wanted her so bad, but he wasn't an emperor yet. He was just a general or whatever. And he wanted her so bad. She's a virgin teenager, and she's like, "No, I won't. I'm not giving up my virginity until we're married." And he's like, "Well, what if I promise to marry you?" And she goes, "Fine, I'll give you my virginity if you give me your ring, the ring that has your name on the inside and is your ring. It's the ring that identifies you as you, so that if you die, and somebody has that ring, we know who fucking killed you, or we at least know who knows who fucking killed you. But also so you can be identified by the ring if you're found dead with the ring." It's very similar to the dog tag tradition. These rings were important. She goes, "Give me your ring that identifies you as you. Give me that ring. But you only have to marry me if you become emperor." Well, he becomes emperor, but he tries to not marry her because it's déclassé now for him to marry below his station, especially a teenage girl. He needs a political marriage now that he's suddenly accidentally emperor, right? Well, she shows up on his first day sit in court, which may or may not have happened. This sounds very much like this did not happen, because I don't think the emperor actually sat court the way Celtic and Germanic and Scandinavian kings sat court, especially by 1300, right? But anyway, she comes in, and I've also heard this story in Muslim folklore, so I don't think this happened. I think this is actually a Muslim story that they associated with a Roman because it fit their already previous folklore, but they attached all the things that they liked from the Arabs did. Everything that the Arabs liked from their previous folklore, they just associated it with Rome. Very fucking real. I don't like these people very much because they're extremely embarrassed by their history, and so they give all the worst of it to other people, specifically the Jews. They can take responsibility for none of their history. And so anyway, she comes in and she says, "Hey, so a man promised himself to marry me," and he recognizes her immediately, and he's like, "Oh, fuck." And she's like, "A man promised to no, I guess he doesn't recognize her," is the conceit of the story. Is he's like, and she's talking, and she's got her face covered, and she's like, "A man promised himself to marry me, and now all the conditions are met of the marriage, and he's trying to stiff me," and so the emperor, now suddenly emperor, doesn't know that this is the girl, rules in her favor. He's like, "Okay, well, if you can prove this guy is who you say this guy is, then he has to marry you by the laws of Rome." And so she shows the ring, and he's like, "Oh, damn, okay, well, I have to marry you now." And the point is that the ring was binding. The ring was binding, and it mattered. It mattered that ring transferred from his possession to her person, her body, that it went on her body ceremonially. And it was important that ring didn't get missing, and that if he died, someone didn't steal that fucking ring. Because if he died, it was hers, as was her property, or his property, in the process of going to the marriage. If his best man and his father couldn't keep him from being murdered by her dad or other men who wanted her, then that ring belonged to her as well as his property. That's just how this stuff went. And this isn't just political marriages. Many of these are romantic marriages. And the reason it matters is because, just like in shotgun weddings that you never hear about today, there were plenty of people who were having penetrative sex and not pulling out that absolutely should not have been. Romeo and Juliet is an old story. It's based on Tristan and Isolde, and Tristan and Isolde is significantly older than the Welsh language. That story is old as fuck. And that story is about a guy who's stooping a girl he shouldn't be, and the girl falls in love with that guy instead of her husband. And the bad shit that happens to them as a result. That's what story is about. I was thinking about that on the bus the other day. I was like, there's a country song playing where he's talking about how her love is the song's called Money in the Bank. And he says that your love, baby, your love is better to me than money in the bank. Money in the bank, right? And he says during the course of the song that he has this crazy dream that a man offered him a money-making machine, and that the only thing he wanted in return for the money-making machine was dude's wife. I think it's Anderson. Kenny Anderson, maybe? He wanted dude's lady, and he says, no, my lady's money is better to me than money in the bank, right? And the story, if you take that and you're like, all right, now I'm going to make a novel out of this, or I'm going to make a screenplay out of this, or I'm going to make a story out of this. You start at the moment he tells her, the inciting moment. Is the moment the story starts with him telling her that, not with the guy. It starts with him telling her that. I met this crazy guy. He offered me, but he wanted you, and I said no, because she's supposed to go, what the fuck? You take the machine, I don't like that guy, and you come and you save me now. You rescue me from your idiot choice. Well, that's literally every Orphic myth. And Orphic, not just meaning the cult of Orpheus. I mean, every myth that sounds like the Orpheus story, that's Lot. Gilgamesh has this story. Everything associated with Artemis is in this story. Hell is this story. Hela, the god Hell, is this story. But also the underworld Hell is this story. Hell is the metaphorical place you go where you get yourself in a mythical story. Hell is what happens when you don't tell that guy with the money-making machine, no thanks. Hell is if you have a story to be told in the future. You go through hell. Why? To tell the story. If you don't do anything that puts you in a hellish situation, you're not doing anything. Heaven is the reward for when the story is all the way over. And so anyway, your best man used to carry this ring. Because your best man, the reason that you had a best man is he was your best man because he had a weapon. Literally your best fighting man. Because you ever think about that? Like, why doesn't she bring men and he bring maidens? Why doesn't he have like his sister and his aunt and like a cousin to welcome her into the family? Why does he have a bunch of dudes? And why does she bring women? Oh, to pacify his dudes. Because this used to be a cattle raiding ceremony. This was a cattle raiding, not cattle trading. You say that marriage is chattel slavery? You're wrong. It's the highest form of trading. Because those women that are up there on the dais used to be stolen. The men on the dais used to steal them by force, killing people in the process. That ring could get all of those men killed. That's why the best man carried it. Because all of the groom's rivals are trying to get that ring. This is real. It sounds like Capture the Flag. You're like, this sounds like a game. This sounds like a video game. This sounds too dramatic to be real. Well, I'm telling you right now, real human beings live these lives. The reason that this is captured in ritual is so no blood would be shed. Because a lot of blood used to be shed over sex. A lot of blood used to be shed over sex. You think crimes of passion are out of control now? Just imagine when there was no recourse for it except for a guy getting on a donkey and hitting you with a club. That's why that story is still in the Bible. And so Neebs is right. Everyone has a utility. Ceremonially, ritually, or otherwise. Because now Anthony wants to get married. And he wants a ring boy. And he wants best men to defend him from the groom and the bride's father and all of his rivals who also want her. He wants to have a woman worth stealing with violence. A woman that virtuous and a woman that worthy. This is why we've rejected marriage and marriage traditions. It's because none of us is worthy. None of you is worthy. I was a phenomenal husband. I defy you to prove me wrong. I was so good as a husband, I managed to remain in domestic abuse with this most recent woman 3 years after I told her I couldn't fucking take her domestic abuse anymore. She didn't want to get rid of me because I was that valuable as a man. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to share with you what the cycles of my thoughts look like. I need to now get on the bus. I need to make one more of these damn surveys. And then I need to start playing these stupid arcade games that will give me about $1 an hour. So if you can find it in your heart, the Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, all of it is in my profile. If you can't find it in my YouTube profile, I have the links in my tips on X or Twitter, S Philalitea, also just VK Dennis. It should be super easy to find me. I'm actually a really cordial dude. Really easy to get along with. Now, if you're difficult to get along with, I'm not easy to get along with because I'm not going to be stepped on by anyone. There you go. My battery is officially losing. Yep. It has lost. My hand warmer is empty, and that means that this is over. I get to go to Christ's table, and then I'm going to go to the library, and I'm going to see about charging my hand warmer there, because I don't have a fast charging C2C anymore, so I got to make about $25, and telling you guys that is only going to get me verbal abuse. I don't know how you don't know that written abuse is still abuse. But I have goals. I got cigarettes, and then I got a cord to buy, and then I got weed to buy, and then I got cigarettes to buy, and then I got other shit to buy. But I'm probably going to be able to get underwear tonight, and I'm stoked for that. So, whenever, wherever you are, I hope you're well. I hope you keep me in your heart. I hope you're praying for me. I hope you're not asking for specific things, and that you're not telling me what you're praying for because you're ashamed for me to know what you're praying for. Because if you're ashamed for me to know what you're praying for, you're cursing me. Fucking stop it. God doesn't like that shit. Take care.